What is the most disrespectful experience you've ever had as a guest? I once attended a housewarming party hosted by a friend of a friend who had just bought a new house with her newlywed husband. I was the only man at the housewarming party other than the hostess's husband and my friend, a female whom I had known for years since high school. I arrived in time to meet about 20 of the women who had come to meet the hostess and her husband and see her new luxury home which he designed and helped build since he was an architect who specialized in ecologically friendly homes and modern buildings. I arrived with some gifts. A box of some luxurious chocolate hazelnut cake, and a brand new bread maker machine which the hostess really wanted. I was then directed to put the boxes in the kitchen and then proceeded to the living room where everyone was gathered for introductions and helping themselves to non-alcoholic drinks, while the food was being placed on serving plates and brought to the living room. My friend introduced me to the hostess, Kira. I offered my hand to shake. She ignored me at first, while some of the women guests interrupted to compliment her on her new home and another asked her about where she bought her couch set or something along those lines. I spoke up to introduce myself and say my name and she looked at me sideways with her eyes and said, "Just wait your turn." She continued to talk to one of her female guests and laughed, while still ignoring my hand and me. Without even being introduced or shaking hands with Kira, my friend and I just walked over to our spot in the living room while she apologized for her saying that she's probably been very busy setting up her new home and she'll have time to talk to everyone later on. After a few minutes of chatting, Kira's husband, a very nice and quiet shy man, tapped his glass with a spoon like a bell to get started. We all bowed our heads together in prayer and blessed the housewarming party and all who came and brought gifts. Then Kira started her speeches and announcements and each guest had a chance to introduce herself and say one interesting fact about herself. When it came to my turn, Kira interrupted me and said, "We all know who you are, so let's move on to the next guest." She introduced herself before I could even finish saying my name. I stood there speechless but just smiled, not knowing what to say. My friend who brought me just held my hand and smiled at me as if to calm me from being angry. After introductions, Kira offered a tour of her new home and we all followed her from room to room, admiring all the decorations and evening complimenting her on all the amazing ecological things she pointed out, like the triple layered windows that allowed the sun to heat up rooms and 1-inch floor tiles that were made with recycled materials that helped to retain heat, as well as her heating vents that allowed heat from her clothes dryer to be directed to other rooms and items like that. I asked some questions about various items out of curiosity and how they were ecological, and my questions were completely ignored by Kira, who clearly was bothered by my questions or perhaps hearing my voice. When I asked about what certain switches were for and other details, Kira politely reprimanded me saying, "Don't touch anything," which she repeated again when she showed her gray water recycling system for the toilets and for use in their garden and greenhouse room that held many plants and had an indoor bed of vegetables growing under a large slanted window which made up much of that room's wall that allowed sunlight in. Kira's husband quietly told me about what some of the switches were for.